Judaism is a convention. It has nothing to do with the core of the universe directly. I have a sense that every religion is a vital organ of the life of the planet. I wasn't saying masturbate every day. On the Sabbath, celebrate your body and take your time. I'm glad that they can call me a heretic.
Boulder, Colorado. Local Jews celebrate Purim. In the basement of a hall, they gather to hear a story. The story of the ancient Jews of Persia
from India to Ethiopia
and how they survived. The costumes are a big part of the celebration. The man at the center of this crowd is Rabbi Zalman Schachter-Shalomi. He used to be Orthodox. Now the rabbi is the spiritual leader of tens of thousands of Jews. They call themselves Renewal Jews. They believe Jewish laws must reflect modern Western values. Otherwise, they're irrelevant. The rabbi calls it updating the faith. Others call it going too far. He's now 81, and the rabbi still teaches at synagogues like this one in Boulder. He looks like an Orthodox Jew, but he doesn't sound like one. And for that, some Orthodox Jews have called him dangerous. He speaks openly about sex, ordains women, and borrows from other religions. He's been attacked for that. Above all, the rabbi says feeling the presence of God is much more important than following Jewish law. And for that, he's been called a heretic. Rabbi, we're sitting here in a synagogue in Boulder. You've spent much of your life in places like this. You grew up as an Orthodox Jew. You were ordained as an Orthodox rabbi. But you had a lot of questions about Orthodox Judaism. What were your doubts and your questions?
Well, they first came slowly, you know. When I was in school, one of the questions would come up about the creation taking place in 6 days of 24 hours. That somehow, you know, but in connection with everything that came in about evolution and fossils and so on and so forth, didn't sit so well with me.
Your family also fled Europe during the Holocaust. How did that experience affect you?
It was very upsetting. When we had to flee across the border into Belgium, to Antwerp, the feeling was very, very strong that why have we been so forsaken? No country would want to give us visa to let us enter. And we knew that if we were caught with Hitler, we wouldn't be able to survive. So that raised question, what kind of a God is permitting these things and so on and so forth. And that rankled a lot. At the same time, I was also trying to obey the religious laws. So it is doing it and also feeling at the same time that there is some friction between where my heart is and where my mind is.
During the 60s, you hung around with a lot of writers and thinkers who were questioning a lot of things. How did they influence you as a religious person?
Well, you know, it's not a person influencing as it is the vibration of the society in which I move, you know. So you read Camus, you read Sartre, and at the same time, some things in science fiction that open up a vista of something different and more beautiful and more together in the future. So Judaism became important to me, and Jewish mysticism and so on and so forth. But then I read that there is a chemical way to verify those experiences of the spirit. And that was very interesting. So some of the people with whom I was hanging out at that time were into the same kind of thing. And I wrote to them asking whether I could have an experience in their place. And
What do you mean an experience?
Well, taking LSD at that time. That's very simple. That's the experience.
You wanted to take LSD?
Oh, sure. It looked like we would be now able to explore areas of the mind that before only mystics and shamans were talking about, and we wouldn't have to fast and live in isolation for 40 days or for 3 years' time.
But you were an Orthodox rabbi at the time.
So it wasn't not kosher. So I didn't consider this to go against the grain of my religion.
But you did split from Orthodox Judaism around the same time. What happened?
Yeah, but that wasn't necessarily the issue of, well, let's begin with that thing, the place of women, okay? There is in Orthodox Judaism, you wouldn't count a woman as being one of the 10 to make up a quorum. My sense was that our religion had become very, how would I say, imbalanced, more testosterone, patriarchal stuff in it than it needs to have in order to be friendly to the planet.
So the place of women was something that you had a lot of questions about. You also had questions about Jewish law and strict adherence to Jewish law. Can you explain for me?
Sure. Imagine that I had to make a living as a potter. And I'd have to toil a whole day and late into the night to make pots and pots and pots. And then came the Sabbath, and to make a pot on the Sabbath would be breaking the Sabbath. It's not something that I should be doing to produce more pots. Now, at this point, I'm working at a brokerage. I'm sick and tired of numbers and of papers and of all these things, and now comes the day that I can really be myself. And I take out the potter's wheel, and I throw a pot, and I live completely in that thing. Am I breaking the Sabbath or not? According to
Are you saying that people should be allowed to throw pots on the Sabbath if they want?
See, as I'm saying it, the answer is no. I'm not saying this. I'm saying that the person who does it in this way, as I described it, I can't say that that person broke the Sabbath. There's a difference between that.
But you know, many Jews consider Jewish law to be the glue, the absolute glue of their faith.
So
they have a lot of problems with what you're saying.
Well, that's true, and I have a problem also with what other people do with it. If I were to say, what does the Sabbath tell me to do? It tells me move out of production into being. Okay, I wouldn't want to say that people should eat anything that isn't kosher. We keep our home very kosher. We don't answer the telephone on the Shabbos. I do a lot with my computers, but not on Shabbos. So there is that element in which
but
I
are
observe.
You picking and choosing the things that work for you within your life?
That's right.
But Jewish law is absolute, is it not?
Who says so? I buy the truth from the revelation, and I want to serve God, but also from a point of view that is balanced today. And I think that's where Jewish renewal differs from Orthodoxy.
You've told bar mitzvah students that masturbation is a spiritual experience. You know, this makes people very uncomfortable. You are the spiritual leader of a movement called Renewal. What is Renewal Judaism?
There have been a number of movements in Judaism, beginning with Reform first, that wanted to liberalize the hold of orthodoxy. Then you look at the people who came from Europe right after the war, and they were people who were trying to rebuild what there was before. When we get to renewal, it is not saying that we have to cut off something. It says, at the very source, where this begins as a relationship between souls of people and God, as a covenantal thing, if we return to that place and then say, how does this express itself today? We want to take the old forms and renew them. So renewal is opening up, if you will, the ceiling.
Part of the renewal is your very openness about sexuality. You've told bar mitzvah students that masturbation is a spiritual experience. This makes people very uncomfortable.
So you know what? If they were to only look what they put under the rug and don't want to look at, if there is no outlet that is a kosher outlet, then the question is, what do you do with that energy? And here is when I was saying, I wasn't saying masturbate every day. I was saying to that person, if you can manage, control it during the week, and then Shabbos comes, and on the Sabbath, celebrate your body and take your time. I'm not ashamed of saying that. And if those people who...
But can you see how some people might have trouble
No,
with what you're saying?
It's their problem. It's their problem because the hypocrisy is so great. I know that the more they will feel ouched by my statement, the deeper is the hypocrisy in which they try and bury their own attraction, repulsion to sexuality.
You've also been divorced several times. Your critics say that this is morally unacceptable for a spiritual leader. What do you say to those folks?
Well, I agree with them.
You do?
They don't have to accept it. I only know that there is a place where the Torah is different than, let's say, in Christianity. That there are some situations where karma and life between two people is outgrown, and what is left is difficulty, great difficulty. They come back into their own sphere and they see that this is not who they should be and with whom they should be. And sometimes you take a look at how long you keep from divorce in order to protect children, to protect other situations, and so on and so forth.
So no regrets? No regrets about that? No.
No, but I also feel good about my past spouses.
You've met the Dalai Lama, and you've also talked very openly about learning from other religions. Many Jews, Orthodox Jews, would not see any value in that. Why do you do this?
Well, let's go ahead and say that after the Holocaust, we needed transplants. I'm very serious about that, because when you start looking at how many thousands of holy, great, learned people were killed at that time, and you start looking at a religion that had its underbelly cut out at that point, and so much of what we would practice in the spiritual crafts has been taken from us. That can't be written so much in books. It has to be given over by the great mentors. My mentor was the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, and from him I got a great deal. And I had the sense that before that time I may have been connected to Judaism, but through him I was connected to God. And
What's the difference?
What's the difference? Oh, Judaism is a convention. It's something that people hold on to. It has nothing to do with the core of the universe directly. On the other hand, from God comes that which becomes Judaism. It's a difference. There is a difference. At one time, we used to think that when the Messiah will come, our religion will prove the others wrong. And that's called triumphalism. And I don't believe in triumphalism.
You admire some very Orthodox rabbis, some of your teachers, many of them are gone. How would they judge the things that you're saying today?
Well, I have a belief in the afterlife. And I have a certainty, not just a belief, about the afterlife. And along with that comes a sense that my teachers and masters are seeing the universe from a wider place than they saw it when they were in the body and in the flesh. One of the things I want to bring out really clearly about why am I hanging out with people like the Dalai Lama and let's say Father Matthew Fox and other people of that sort. I used to visit Thomas Merton in his monastery. The reason for that is that I have a sense that all religions, every religion, is a vital organ of the life of the planet. At one time, we used to think that when the Messiah will come, our religion will prove the others wrong. And that's called triumphalism. And I don't believe in triumphalism. And I don't believe that in the other world there is triumphalism either.
But you're very much in the minority, I would say.
So Maimonides has said in matters of faith, you can be a majority of one.
But some Jews would call you a heretic.
I'm glad. I'm glad that they can be so strong and call me a heretic. But you know what? When they have trouble with their kids, they send them to me. You see, when somebody says, Zalman, what is it that you're teaching people? What is it that you want to give over to them? I would want to say tools. I want to give them tools. I don't want to give them product. A lot of rabbis would want to say, I will tell you the product of my learning, of my thinking, of my decreeing what the legal stuff is. I give you the product. Okay? So I translated the prayer book into a vernacular that allows people to feel what they're saying. So it's giving people tools. If they're interested at all in religion and in that relationship, they have a connection with God. That's going to help them.
How likely is it that your vision will actually prevail?
It has no other choice.
A lot of what you're saying is very attractive to some North American Jews who believe very much in the renewal that you're talking about. How relevant is what you're saying to the whole issue of Israel-Palestine?
You're touching something that gives me an ache in the heart. Before the 67 war, I tried to publish a piece, and in it I wrote that Jerusalem needs to be internationalized. The United Nations moved there, away from New York, into the place where the prophets have said, my house shall be a house of prayer for all peoples. It fell on deaf ears, I still have some feelings about that. I have children in Israel. So I have that vision, and I think that's a strong and important vision.
How likely is it that your vision will actually prevail?
It has no other choice. It has no other choice.
You have lived for 81 years. You have thought a lot about dying. How do you prepare to die?
Oh, we have so many wonderful ways to do that. Every Shabbos, when Shabbos goes away, something inside of me dies, and you let go at that time. You go to sleep at night and you say a prayer, dear God, I forgive everyone who has angered, hurt me, or troubled me in any way, whether it was in this incarnation or in any other. And now I turn my spirit over to you. You know? And so you practice that. The issue that's troublesome for many people is pain and being locked into a body that no longer is continent, that has trouble living and breathing and so on and so forth. And that's much harder. That's much harder. This is where one needs God's help to be able to stay patient through that process.
Do you believe people should stay patient through that process? If they're living in a body that no longer works for them?
You know what? If you ask me this way, I won't answer it the way in which you ask it. But if you were to ask, do I think that a person who has not been able to handle intractable pain takes a way out that that person will be damned? I want to bear witness, no, they won't be damned for that.
What do you think will happen to you when you die? Where do you go?
Once I was putting my son Yotam to bed, you know, and there's always the conversations that happen with your kids when they don't want to go to sleep. So he says, Abba, what happens to people when they die? And I turn right back to him and say, Yotam, what do you think? He says, I think we have two lives. We have a wake-up life and a dream life. And I think the wake-up life dies and the dream life continues. You know, that's a wonderful answer.
You have learned a lot of things in your life. What would you say is the most important thing that you've learned?
To discover the God inside of themselves. I think once that happens and there's a living connection, morality gets balanced, relationships become healthier, because that reference is always to go back and to say, new God, what do you say? So you see what I'm saying? This is a process, and I think that's what I'd like most people to be able to gain from. Yeah, I want to leave that behind.
You're going to officially retire later on this spring. How do you think the wider Jewish community will think about you as you've retired? How will they judge you?
There is a Yiddish expression that is very nice that goes, if you need the thief, you cut him from the gallows. You take him down and you don't kill him, you know. It depends whether they will need me or not. If they won't need me, then they'll forget me very soon, and I'll be just another station on the road. If they'll need me, then they'll go into my tool chest and they'll pull something out. So I don't care whether they will remember me by name, but I'm much more interested that they will do those things that will make them feel more alive in their Judaism.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Enjoyed to work with you.